Okay, so I'm already on the all new Classic 350. Okay, you will hear my first thoughts literally as we go. Let's do this. Okay, first thoughts incoming. So the sitting position is much higher than the CB350. First thought, my legs are perched up much higher. I am a lot more in a squatty position compared to the CB350. Initially, in spite of all the refinement that everybody is promising, the bike still feels has a very distinctive Royal Enfield character. There is no doubt about that. I think in terms of refinement, it's definitely much better than the previous Classic 350s for sure. But first cut thoughts, I feel the Honda is a bit more refined than this. The seating is quite comfortable, and again I tell you guys, the toe and heel shifter, the way it operates on the Classics is a lot better than the CB350. I think in terms of refinement, I like the CB350 better, no doubt about it. And look, even in the fourth gear, if I pull, it just goes. Doesn't happen on the CB350. Mirrors perfectly usable. Let me try the legendary slow relaxed Enfield crawl. Look, I am somewhere around 38, 37, and I am in the fourth gear, and see how effortlessly the bike moves. Look at this, I am at about 25, still in the fourth gear, and as soon as I rev up the accelerator, it just pulls. The speedometer, whatever you want to call it, I definitely like the Hondas better because of the layout and the kind of information I get to see. Yeah, the other thing, I can definitely feel some sort of heaviness for sure on this motorcycle. It's not as nimble, swift and agile as the Honda, but having said that, it's nothing to be too concerned about, but you can make out the extra weight. Okay, so I had just parked the bike in the petrol station while I went to fill some fuel on the Honda CB350. But okay, coming back, and when I tried to get on top of the bike and try to take it off the side stand, I can definitely feel the extra weight, so that's something to be really borne in mind. Okay, let's do some acceleration tests. Acceleration definitely is good, and yeah, nothing to complain on the acceleration. Very linear, quite responsive, no lags. Other than that, how's the sitting comfort so far? Yeah, the sitting comfort is absolutely good, no complaints there. I would definitely put either some sort of an RD handlebar or some sort of risers for this, because the way I'm accustomed to sitting on the CB350 and where the handlebar is, this is a bit of a reach compared to that. How is the shock absorbers? Yeah, much better than the CB350. I've got to say this. The CB350 in certain parts feels a bit more hard and a bit more sporty, but this one is soaking up all of the undulations on the road quite well. So far I am impressed, let me just put it that way. This is a motorcycle on which you can comfortably go from city to city. That's definitely something that I'd like to highlight. The way I'm seated, the way my butt is resting on the seat, the way my legs are, but I'd change it to some sort of an RD handlebar, which brings the handlebar to about here, and in addition makes it a bit wider. In terms of the reach of my legs to the ground, I think this is a bit more lower than the CB350. Definitely my legs feel a lot more comfortable when they're resting on the ground. I have got a little bit of a bend in my knee as well. I've got to say I like the seat better on this than compared to the CB. Compared to even the split seat of the CB, this stock seat is much better. The overall seating ergonomics, the overall rider's triangle, if I compare it to the between the two, I think the CB probably wins that one by a slight margin, not a major margin. Definitely no problems with high speed on this bike. I managed to do about 80 plus before I had to again slow down because of the conditions around me. But yeah, at that speed on the old Gen Classic, it would have really started vibrating all over. How about the handlebar grips? I like them. I think when I compare it to the Honda, I like it an equal amount because you get this bulge in the middle, which really makes it a bit more comfortable to grip. There are areas where the CB350 wins over this. There are areas where this wins over the CB350. But overall, I am here to tell you in no uncertain terms that you are not making a mistake buying this motorcycle. That is something which I can guarantee you. What about the clutch? So if you look at the clutch here, it's a bit flat. It's not cylindrical or spherical like most clutches are, and because of how flat it is, although the clutch play is not as soft as the CB350, still operating this clutch is not at all a problem. I find it quite friendly, in fact. Nothing to complain about there. And the bike is super planted. You can easily go for a tour on this bike. Just put all of your luggages at the back, have a tank bag in the front, and you can ride for hours on this bike. There's absolutely no problem. I think Kashmir to Kanyakumari tour, no problem. East coast to west coast tour, no problem. Yeah, it can. This bike can handle everything that is thrown at it. And even if something goes wrong, you have Royal Enfield showrooms present everywhere, so you are sorted. Yeah, so I think I'm at a place where I can start summing up my overall impressions and thoughts on what this bike feels like to a long-term Honda Highness CB350 owner and rider. Definitely, so thought number one, conclusion number one, definitely you're not making a mistake by buying this bike if you're inclined towards this sort of a motorcycle. So let me make that very clear. Definitely, so if you're already leaning towards this bike, go for it. As the man says, and now you have my permission to buy. Sorry, couldn't help it. So yeah, you will not have any regrets buying this bike if you're already leaning in this direction. But if you ask me, okay, I am indifferent whether it's the CB350 or the new Classic 350. Which one would you recommend? And I'm being highly impartial when I say this. Absolutely no sense of bias. I like the Royal Enfield brand and the Honda brand an equal amount. I am not particularly, at least not anymore, not particularly anymore, sort of skewed or tilted towards one brand more than the other. But yeah, if you were to ask me overall, tell me which bike I should buy, I would definitely say the CB350. Okay, let me break that decision down into its individual components, right? Why the CB350? In spite of me saying that the saddle is more comfortable and the gearing and torque is much better on this bike and all of that. So why do I still sort of nudge you in the direction of the CB350? The reason number one, the overall refinement. The overall refinement is definitely much better on the CB350. This is by no means a This is by no means me saying that this bike feels crude or unrefined. It's just that in a relative sense, the CB350 feels a lot more refined, which shouldn't come as a surprise to too many people. So yeah, there is that. Secondly, I think in spite of the gearing being a lot different on the CB350, because of the easy operability of the clutch, and because of how smooth the gear shift levers are and the clutch and all of that, even though it involves a lot more gear changes and a lot more activity happening, I think in terms of the sheer rider's triangle and the ergonomics and all of that, I think it is very easily manageable, and I do manage it on a day-to-day basis. So the gearing and the torque factor is greatly negated by all of this. I still think the Royal Enfield wins overall in the gearing and torque aspect, but yeah, that's on that. And the weight, the next one is the weight. The overall weight of this bike, especially when it's parked somewhere on the side stand and you attempt to make it straight and take the stand off and start riding, it is in those times that you actually start to feel the weight of the bike. Whereas the CB350 is like riding any commuter, just like your Splendor or your Passion Pro or fill in the blank, whichever commuter. It's literally maybe a slightly bit heavier than a typical commuter, but yeah, the lightness and the nimbleness of the CB350, it's a marked difference compared to this bike. And especially when you're trying to back this bike out of a parking lot, you will feel that difference. So overall ease of riding, I think the CB350 wins. I think in terms of the fuel tank and the mileage and the fuel economy, of course the Honda is a 15-liter fuel tank with an additional 2 liters in reserve, so that is definitely more than the fuel tank size of this bike, which I think is around 13 liters. And if you add to that the fuel economy, which is about 35-36 on the Honda versus slightly lesser on this, if not a whole lot lesser, I think the tank to tank fuel range which you get on both bikes, the Honda CB350 wins. So that's always a good news when it comes to long distance touring or traveling on the bike. So a lot lesser fuel stops, lot lesser fuel anxiety. So again the Honda CB350 is going to win on that count. Next, the reliability and the service availability. So that's where I think it's a tie, because definitely the Royal Enfields of today are a lot more reliable than what they used to be, that's for sure. But I think in the reliability battle, the Honda definitely wins. But what the Royal Enfield probably lacks a little bit in reliability, just a little bit, is more than made up for the fact that there are service center locations pretty much everywhere all over the country, and the spare parts and the cost of service and everything is quite cheap. So the lack of reliability is more than compensated by that factor. But having said that, the Honda Big Wing service locations are pretty much coming up everywhere at a really rapid click. So pretty soon, I think this advantage which the Royal Enfield has today will be no longer as big an advantage as it is today. And remember, all that the Honda corporate team or whoever, whatever you want to call them, needs to decide to do is, they need to just decide that for the service, we will start servicing the CB350 in the normal Honda locations and not just the Big Wing locations. The day they take that decision, that day will be a game changer, because the normal Honda locations where you can typically service an Activa, for instance, those are everywhere. Those are in every small town, village, city, everywhere they are there. So the day that happens, all they have to do is train their mechanics to work on the CB350 internals and the parts. And as it is, it's not a very complex bike in terms of design and mechanics, so it won't be a great challenge to upskill their mechanics on working on this bike. But as soon as they do it, that's going to be a game changer. So that aspect, I think the the CB350 and the Royal Enfield are probably very evenly poised. So no clear winner there. That's my sense. So I think because of these 5-6 reasons which I just called out, this clearly puts the CB350 a bit ahead of the all-new Classic, in my opinion. I know all of the reputed channels like Power Drift and Zig Wheels and all of these reputed guys, many of them seem to be preferring this all-new Classic 350, which is fair. It's purely their opinion for sure, but it's definitely not going to sway my opinion on where things stand. And this is with an impartial sense of judgment, or the fact that I am trying to keep this review as unbiased as possible. Obviously no owner's bias, because I already own the CB350. I am not favoring it over this, so that I'm very clear about that. So this review is almost as if I am somebody who's in the market for a new bike in this category, and knowing what I know about the CB350, what I feel about the all-new Classic 350. That's the whole premise of this review. So I think that needs to be very clear. So there you have it, guys. So if you are somebody who's new in the market and you want an overall recommendation from a long time CB350 owner, which is a better bike, I would definitely vote for the CB350 because of all these reasons. And if you are somebody who comes to me and tells me, look, you are somebody who's been having the CB350 for about 11 months now, so you know the bike a lot better. I have taken a test ride of both the bikes, and I am slightly leaning towards the Classic 350 than the CB350, but in the long term I don't want to regret my decision. So what do you recommend? I would definitely tell you that you will not be regretting it if you buy the all-new Classic 350. So go for it with your eyes closed. You have my blessing. That's me, a long-term Honda CB350 owner, telling you that you're absolutely not making any mistake if you go with the all-new Classic 350. So go for it with all confidence, go for it with all conviction. It's not a mistake. It's a beautiful bike. This is literally like a reincarnated bike of the old gen Classic. So literally there is no comparison between this bike and the old one. So bear that in mind. Go for it. You will not regret it. You will love this bike. There is much to love about this bike, especially the low end torque and the gearing and the seating comfort and the ergonomics, and the classic Royal Enfield proposition of service centers everywhere, cheap spare parts, all of that. And ultimately this bike is the heartbeat of every motorcycling Indian. So when you put all of this in a package, in a bundle, this bike makes a very strong, compelling proposition. So go for it with your eyes closed. If you're already leaning towards this bike, you're not making a mistake. You will not regret this decision. I think yeah, if you are that second category of person who comes to me, that's what I would tell you. Now if you are the third category of the person who comes to me and tells me, look, I've had the CB350 and I am already bored of the bike or whatever, I've had it for some time and I'd like a change, so should I sell the CB350 and go for the all-new Classic? I would tell you, in my opinion, no, definitely no, because this is again a bike which is more of a workhorse, right? So it's a bike meant to do a job, which is to carry you from point A to point B. It's not exactly a bike meant to wow you with its mechanical prowess or technical superiority. This is not a bike for that. So there is absolutely no need to sell your CB350 and go for this bike. Keep the CB350. It's ultimately the bike that wins in the overall comparison. So keep it, continue to ride it, enjoy it. The all-new Classic definitely has its plus points compared to the old generation, but I think I would tell you to keep your CB350. So there you have it, guys. That's my overall verdict, having ridden this bike for about I think about 45 minutes so far in a mix of riding conditions across the city riding condition, a bit of a highway, and now we are in a bit of back roads, winding back roads. So all things considered, I got a fair feel of the bike. I've got a chance to compare it to my CV350. I've got a chance to compare it to the standard 500, the old generation standard 500, which I used to own and which I used to love. And my brother owns the old generation 2012 classic 350 with the carburetor. I ride that as well from time to time. So when I compare it to the old generation, this bike is a literal rebirth of the Royal Enfield. They were not kidding when they said it's reborn, because it's literally a reborn bike. There is no semblance of the feel of this bike to the old generation. Buy it with your eyes closed. So that's my verdict, and I hope you had a good time watching this. I hope I've covered a lot of the relevant points for. So I'm not sure how much the camera caught back there. It abruptly turned off. So I was finalizing my verdict. So go for this bike, you will not regret it. But overall, I think the CV350 wins. I hope I have covered a lot of the everyday considerations and aspects about riding and owning a motorcycle. If I have missed out anything, separately ask me that question in the comments below, and I'll try to answer to the best of the knowledge I have.